You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
And welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to be talking about England's ODI series against South Africa and ODI cricket slightly more broadly. England going through a little bit of a slump at the moment. They've been bowled out in their last 4 matches. What's going wrong there? How can they fix it? I'm Jack Hope, and to go through all of those topics, I'm joined by Dan Weston. It's been a little while, Dan, since you've been on the pod. How you doing?
Yeah, it certainly has, Jack. I'm well, thanks. Yeah, great to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Before we get into England v South Africa, we'll talk about the first ODI from that and where the rest of the series might go first in the show, I think. A few messages. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. That's in the show notes. That's the best way to support the show. If you like what we do, you want to keep us going, you think that there's value in Ross, Max, myself chatting nonsense about cricket, then from £4 a month, you can contribute. You get access to a Discord, extra shows, etc., etc. As I said in the show notes. Dan, we're going to talk about the ODI first, and I can really quite briefly give a quick summary of that to kick us off. South Africa, they batted first on Tuesday. We should have done the show yesterday and it would make more sense, but yeah, what are you going to do? On Tuesday, and they batted pretty well. They put 333 on the board. The star of the show, Rassie van der Dussen, 134 from 117 balls. I think it was the third highest score ever without a 6 being hit, which sounds sort of a bit like a negative, but they were playing at Durham, which is, it's like playing on a baseball ground or something like that. It's an absolutely massive playing area. In response, England got off to a slowish start by their standards and never properly got into the chase, despite getting up to 100 for 1. Top scores, Joe Root, 86 from 77. He looked all right. And Bairstow picked up 63, his first decent white ball score of the summer. Ben Stokes, obviously the story of the day, really. 5 from 11 balls with the bat and not much of a contribution with the ball either. So he goes into retirement, which will be a loss for England moving forward. And yeah, the innings came to an end quite a way short of the total. It was extremely hot, and I think a lot of the players were just happy that the day was over. South Africa winning by 62 rands, I guess. I mean, that doesn't quite
62 rand worth.
Yeah. Dan, what did you make of the performance from England and the performance from South Africa?
So I think what you said first of all about Chester Street being a very kind of low scoring ground is so true. From memory, it's got the lowest boundary percentage of all blast venues, for example. So I think when South Africa had a good start and then Van der Dussen and Markram kicked on, that 333 for 5 or 50 overs is probably not far off the equivalent of 400 somewhere else. Or, say if it was a Trent Bridge or something like that. So that looked pretty huge. And then England just didn't really ever try and break the back of the chase, which was a bit strange to me. And I'm gonna raise a few questions here, I think, through this pod about certain players in the England group and whether they might be suited to playing international cricket right now.
Okay. Is there anyone you want to start off with, or do you want to? Yeah, go on.
Let's do it. So I think we'll go with the batting to start with, and then we'll move on to the bowling, because I think that quite a lot of people on social media are talking about some perplexing decisions with England's bowling group. First of all, I'm not hugely sold on the current version of Jason Roy. I've got to tell you. If you look at his T20 numbers, his intent has dropped, particularly 6 hitting. And I don't think he's the Roy of, say, 3 years ago right now. Now, you might turn around and say, okay, well, that's logical. He's 32. Maybe he's in some form of decline. the cricket media, regardless of who the player is, they don't seem to think that any old player is in decline. They basically think that every single player who's over the age of 30 and not playing very well is just going through a bad patch. And then suddenly, shock horror, the actual player retires, which has happened recently. So said player knew he was in decline, but the media wasn't aware of that. Roy hasn't impressed me a lot over the last couple of years. I'm going to be honest with you, and I think that England have got some big decisions to make, particularly with regards to the players who are over that sort of 31, 32 years old age bracket, and who aren't perhaps performing at the level that they have done in the past. Now, it's interesting because it's probably a tough sell trying to criticise a guy who's got 86 or 77 balls, but I've also got Joe Root in my sights a little bit here. Now, I watched him play in the Blast against Leicester, and he batted with Milan, and I felt that, I'm going to be really honest here, I felt that they didn't really have control over the scoring rate, and they let the required rate get out of hand before they tried to do something about it. And I think that scoring 7 boundaries in 77 balls when you're chasing 3-3-3 isn't a great usage of your resources. Yeah, you can catch up at the end and make your strike rate look a bit better than what it maybe actually was for patches, but it puts pressure on teams. Now, a lot of people seem to think that Root is an exceptional ODI player, and again, this might be a hard sell to some people, but I've actually pulled up his stats over the last 2 and a bit years, so from 2020 onwards, and the average is under 40, 39 at a strike rate of just over 80. Is that selfless, fearless, brave cricket? He's only scored 3 sixes and 435 balls in that sample size. So is that the model that England want to play? I'm unconvinced, and I'd like to see Joe Root do well, but by the same token, I feel that because he hasn't played a lot of T20, I worry that the short format, power hitting, ultra aggressive style is kind of evolving without him.
See, I'd have quite a different view on this. I think Root at the moment is maybe England's most important ODI player, because I think he's the only one equipped to bat through the middle overs at a reasonably, with a decent level of stability, and score over, say, 85. Now, what did you say? He's striking at 80 in the last few years. Yeah. I'm just getting his numbers up now because I think this is an interesting one. I'm going to guess that he hasn't played that much ODI cricket since 2019.
That's 11 innings.
That's 11. I think you probably want a little bit more than that. I don't think we're at this point in time that we can say that. And I think as well, I'm okay with Root going at 85 and averaging 50 if he's scoring those runs between the 10th over and the 35th over of the innings, which is predominantly where he operates. Like, there's not, with Morgan and Stokes out the side, England don't have another proven player that can score 50 off 60 balls regularly in that time, effectively delay the entry points of Livingston, Ali, even Butler to later in the innings when they're at their most devastating, but also produce runs at a good rate. Like, if you look at England's middle order, the 2015 to 19 cycle, none of them struck at over 100 in that middle chunk of the game. They were all 85 to 90 or just over 90 maybe. Which isn't, that's 25 overs of the game where England's 3 biggest run scorers are scoring at under a run a ball, but because they were so good in the power play and because they were so good at the death, and because actually scoring at like 85 in those middle overs makes you, puts you in the best 10 players in that middle phase, that's sort of perfectly acceptable. And I actually, it's interesting that you're picking up on Root as a potential problem there. I totally agree.
I wouldn't say that it was, a massive issue, but I'm saying, does he fit the brand of cricket that England have?
Well,
try to create.
he might not, but then I'd potentially sort of counter that. Certainly in T20 cricket, the answer is no. But I'd counter that with a point about stability in this England team. Full stop. They keep being bowled out. They nearly got bowled out against the Netherlands. Like it's not. It's great having a strike rate of 110. It's great having a strike rate of 120. But if you last 25 balls in an ODI, that isn't good enough. 30 off 25 is extremely what you're going to have there is an extremely unstable batting lineup that's going to get bowled out for poor scores really regularly. And yeah, you might pump a team every now and then, but like actually the way to consistently win in ODI cricket is what England did 2015 to 19, which is through all the phases of the game, bat with a lot of stability and score quicker than everyone else. It's not necessary to blast teams out up front like Sri Lanka in the 90s or something like that. Although they did win a World Cup, obviously, I think it's that sustained, grinding down as much as anything that made England excellent. And I think that's the biggest loss. I mean, I think Roy's another one to pick up on, but they've kind of got Salt, haven't they, there to in theory come in and solve that problem. I think if you look at this England team, I think Stokes and Morgan leaving is tragic for their prospects in the near term. I don't. Maybe not tragic. It's not like it's not, to be fair, like Morgan and Stokes have walked away at their very peak here. Both of them probably, either in slumps or past their best. But finding players to replicate what they did 2015 to 19 is going to be really hard. They were generational talents. And we'll talk about this maybe a bit later, but we'll go through other players that we'll go through some of the other batting or the other players in the batting lineup before we do that. But I don't know if England know where to turn right now. Anyway, back to you, Dan. So we've done Root. I disagreed on Root. I kind of agree on Roy.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you go on about, you mentioned about Morgan and Stokes leaving. Personally, if we discount the captaincy aspects of it, then Morgan isn't a huge loss.
Not anymore, no.
There's a dozen players in county cricket who could do just as good a job, if not better than him. I think so, anyway. If you want a left-hand specific, I think Ben Duckett now is playing very, very, very well. And there's plenty of other options as well. Now, Stokes is a weird one because I think he's evolved into this very batting orientated all-rounder. Where if you pull up his ODI numbers from the last couple of years, they're not particularly pretty. And I think that's probably generally similar in T20 as well. So but the problem with this Stokes is that these kind of players don't really grow on trees. I don't think he's a genuine all-rounder. I think he's a batting all-rounder.
Yeah.
But who else is there who can take that mantle? Now, I'm sure that most people who follow my work will know that I rate King Benny Howell very highly. Benny is probably, in my view at least, he's a far better bowler than Ben Stokes in white ball cricket, but Ben is a better batter. So there is an opportunity to structure up differently, but I'm not sure that people at the ECB agree with my valuation, although I would also say that I've been proven right so far when I've recruited him, given the fact that he was one of the bowlers of the tournament in 100, and in T10 he had a boundary concession percentage of lower than any other pace bowler who played regularly in the tournament. So actually, there's obviously a very, very good player there. I think it's an absolute tragedy that England don't look at him.
He had a pretty good game. I'm just looking it up now against basically this exact South Africa side last week. He picked up 3 for 58 with the ball. including getting Rassie van der Dussen and Markram and David Miller, which is like the heart of the batting lineup, basically. and then hit 40 off 33 balls with the bat.
Handy performance. See, there you go. I mean, I genuinely actually don't know what more he has to do to get an opportunity in white ball cricket for England. And like I said, I think it's one of the biggest tragedies of modern selection that he hasn't got opportunities. Now, that's, as I said, that Stokes role is difficult to fill. I have a feeling that England will be looking more down the Sam Curran route for that replacement, which, maybe Sam can grow into that role, but I'm not sure he's quite there yet.
Yeah, this is where if this is the way they go, I think this would be a massive error. I think already England have probably got one too many players that are explosive but can't bat for 20 overs, and Sam Curran is not a solution to that problem. It's I was joking about this on Twitter, and I almost can't believe you're going to say it, but England need another anchor in ODI cricket. They need a middle over cruiser who can play all different types of bowling, isn't going to get bogged down by a matchup, and is going to score 80 to 90 for an extended period of time.
I'm gonna have to say I disagree with this completely, and I'll tell you for why.
Go on then.
Obviously, we've got one en route. We've got. I mean, the term average in cricket is or sport in general is overused when describing what actually people should be using a different adjective for, like poor or below average. But average seems to be almost like a derogatory term, which I always find bizarre. But England's bowling attack is, to use that paraphrase, very average. And when you've got, let's not put too fine a point on it, a very mediocre bowling attack, you can't afford anchors.
But this is, I think, but this is where I think there's a bit more nuance to this point. Like 50 overs is a long time to bat.
No, for sure.
Like there's already two guys in the power play that are going to bat in a way that looks to exploit that phase of the game. Now, that worked really well 2015 to 2019. Then they changed the ball, and it just factually does not work as well anymore. The global average for the power play has gone from 36 to 33. It's harder to bat in the power play of an ODI now. So that's going to expose your middle order a little bit more if you play that way, which means you're going to need somebody in there, or at least one more person in there who's capable of batting or rebuilding an innings, let's say, because you are expecting, it's great if it comes off, but you are taking more of a risk if you want to play like that if you're England now. The other thing is, like, you look at some of these guys batting down the order, and there's no other way to put this, they are bad if they come in before the 40th over. Like Moeen Ali is the worst number 7 in the world since 2015, batting at number 7 if he's in before the 40th over. He averages 20 at 70. Like that's unusably bad. When he comes in after the 40th over, he's one of the best players in the world. He starts really quickly. He gets, he gets quicker and quicker and quicker, and he's worth having in your side. But you can't have him he's not a viable player before that phase in the game. There's something about him, I don't know what it is, but there's something about him that over a long period of time, thousands of balls, has not worked in that spell of the game. Livingston falls into that mold a little bit as well. Butler's a bit better, but Butler still gets out every 30 balls. That's not stable batting. If you're out every 30 balls, you're getting bowled out basically every single match. You'd need an entire team of just Butlers to post a decent score, and England don't have that. They need another person to effectively prolong that middle bit, because what Moeen, Livingston, and Butler will do is actually catch up. Like in a T20, I think we both agree that isn't necessarily viable. But having those three come in with 15, 12 overs, 10 overs to go, that's 10 and over for 15 overs if you're England, in theory. Like it's something that they are or it's something that they're able to do or would be able to do on a regular basis. I mean, like what I've seen in the last 4 matches is them try and turn Butler from Joss Butler, maybe the best white ball or ODI batter in the world, into, you know, Owen Morgan Mark II. And it's like, I mean, you are solving the problem of the number 5 getting worse and then retiring, but you're also turning one of your biggest assets into a player that you probably be able to find like a lot of production from if you turn to county cricket. I mean, like, I don't know, Ben Duckett, for example, you've named him. How much worse than 2015 to 2019 Morgan would he be? Probably a little bit worse than peak Morgan, but not substantially. And then you still have Joss Butler, who's great, yeah. Instead, we've kind of got Butler at number 5, who is worse than Morgan, maybe the same production as Duckett, and then a bunch of guys who are worse than Butler filling Butler's role. And that's you know where I think there's a problem. I think you need another guy in there to sort out. And it's not necessarily an anchor. It's a middle over cruiser is what I like. That's the expression I like. Somebody who can cruise along at a good strike rate.
I've never heard that description for a cricketer.
That's what I'm going for. It's the cruiser. England need a couple of cruisers. They've got Joe Root. He's a cruiser. They had Stokes and Morgan, who were good cruisers, facilitators, whatever you like. Yeah. And I think you don't need somebody in there who's going to do like a. I mean, I don't know. I was looking at the stats of people in the 10th to 35th over this week, and there are guys who have played like every match for their country and strike at 70. Like, you don't need that. That's really
good enough, is it? No,
that's really, really suboptimal. But there's probably a few guys around the England setup or, you know, in county cricket that I think could average 45 in that spell of the game with a strike rate of above 80. Well, in other words, they're going to bat 10 overs or you know, or they're going to face 50, 60 balls every time they bat and pump out a bunch of runs and build this nice foundation.
So the other point I'd make about this batting group is that obviously we know there's no Stokes. Well, out of the top 6 in this match, he's the only left-hander.
Yeah.
So if I'm the opposition, I am pummeling the opposition, England, with leg spin and left arm spin. I'm absolutely not even close. And unless they do something about it. Now, and that's where a Duckett could come in for England, because he's one of the best players of spin in the entire country. And as a left-hander as well, he would be like a match-up breaker. So you put him with a Butler, or you put him with a Livingston or someone like that, and good luck trying to find a matchup that works against both those two players, because it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. So he complements. I think he complements what the England don't have.
Yeah. No. I think that's a good point as well. I mean, I was looking at this batting this week, and we haven't even touched on the bowling. I just think it's creaking all over the place. Like the power play tactics don't work anymore because the ball moves more, and Jason Roy's got worse. So they need to make a change there. I mean, in the match that we're, you know, theoretically talking about, they batted really slowly for the power play. Did that help them? Not really. They lost by 60 runs.
It's almost like, okay, well, when do we panic? But you know, and I'm going to be honest with you. Obviously, this is more of a T20 thing. The amount of teams that I watched play this season in the Blast, and this is a high-scoring league as well, right? The amount of teams that I saw just almost like just amble when they're chasing to required rate of like 13, 14, and right, shit, we better go now. And then it's too late most of the time. Right? Good luck with that. Yeah, you might get 14 and over off the last 4, the last 5 if you're really lucky. But when you're 14 and over, it's the 12th over or something like that, then you're looking at long odds for success. It's a very small percentage chance. And again, like you say, so I got the scorecard here, right? When Roy was out 102 for 1, it was after 19 overs, so they scored just over 5 and over. in a typically higher scoring phase, or a lot of those balls faced were in a typically higher scoring phase, where they needed 6.5 and over from the outset. So they needed 232 of the last 31 overs, including a chunk of them which are in the lower scoring middle over. So it's almost 8 and over in an ODI by that time.
At a big ground.
Yeah, at a huge ground where 333 is like the equivalent of 400. So that's a questionable strategy for sure, no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think that's difficult. And then we've talked at length about these cruisers, the facilitators, the anchors, if you will. And I think down the order there are some questions. I don't know what you do about Moeen Ali if he's regularly coming in early. I think he's excellent to have if he's used in his best role, but you can't put David Willey in front of him as a pinch blocker to try and get him into that situation. And it's then he becomes a problem, and Livingston's not going to play a different way because Livingston is Livingston.
You shouldn't have to.
No, exactly. But if you come in the 30th over or the 25th over or the 20th over, and your team's 100 for 4, you do have to. Like you do have to do a different thing there because there's so much. So you have so much resource wise left to use in the match that 30 off 20, 50 off 25 isn't really getting you where you need to be.
Well, he came in this match with England needing 170 off 18.
I don't know. I'm not.
I'm just saying. So, I mean, he's an exceptional player, but to get
he's not God.
There, that's miracle worker status. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not. If he comes in and he tries to tee off and he gets out, but when he's coming in England and needing 9.5 and over for 18 overs, then that's not his fault. That's the fault of the players who have chewed up balls in front of him.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I think that's I think England need to look elsewhere, basically. You've talked a little bit about the bowling. Bowling, I've not actually really looked into in much detail, to be honest. Like in my mind, this is what I think about the England bowling. None of these people should be playing at the World Cup. We've just got to cross our fingers and hope that a bunch of guys come back from injuries. Like it's how far away from the mark am I with that statement?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think you're that far off. I mean, on Twitter, I posted about the bowling, and Nakul, who obviously comes on the podcast, he replied back and said, England have got injuries. Wood, Archer, Wokes are all injured, but I haven't bothered to go through this, but I can take a very educated guess to this. The percentage of matches that they've been on the same pitch playing in ODI cricket in the last 2 and a bit years from the start of 2020 onwards, I'd imagine it was very, very low.
I think it would be only the World Cup.
Well, that was 2019. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think it would be only those 10 games.
So they haven't been on this pitch at the same time. We're saying that there's a good chance that they haven't been on the pitch for 3 years on the same pitch altogether at the same time. That is not a sustainable strategy. As much as everyone would love to see those guys on the same pitch at the same time, that is not a strategy to build your future around. And as far as strategies go, that's as good as England saying, "Oh well, Michael Vaughan and Marcus Trescothick managed to improve their average in Test cricket 20 years ago, so we'll keep throwing these guys in who average 30 in county cricket and hope they get better." Well, newsflash, that doesn't work either. So, and I don't understand. This is why I don't understand the selection process at all. So, I think I can cut England's plenty of slack about their batting group because that's been a long time batting group. These players are pretty established. We might have issues with potential decline of Roy that we've discussed. We have got a major issue now that Ben Stokes is retiring because the balance that he gives the side is huge. And as I said earlier, he's the only lefty in the top 6, and we might have an issue with kind of Root's overall intent, particularly earlier in his innings. But I mean, those issues pale into insignificance when it comes to looking at the bowling group. I mean, I just don't understand how these players are selected. Okay, so here's the thing, right? If I'm recruiting a player, I can eloquently tell anybody who asks who I feel who obviously merits to know this information, why those players are recruited. Now, that's going to be data driven, a lot of it, but it's also going to be role driven by gap analysis and stuff like that as well. Effectively, what I'm trying to say is that I can be accountable for perceived mistakes, but also take the credit where it goes well too. But if a sign doesn't work out, that happens in life. You know, a football team would kill for 50% of transfers working out for them. So you know, if we're beating that, we're doing good. Now, but I can give a rationale, an evidence-based rationale for every single piece of recruitment. Now, I'm not sure England can do that with these bowlers that they're picking right now. I mean, what is it? What do they actually? How do they pick players? Because no one from England communicates this stuff. I mean, we're now, you know, a good few months into Rob Key's tenure as MD, and I think he deserves credit for how the test team's fortunes have changed. But we don't have a head selector at all. Who's picking the team? Is it the coach? Is it the captain? Is it the senior players? Is it Rob Key? No one knows. No one knows.
Give me an example of somebody who's been picked in the last 4 matches that, from a bowling point of view, is questionable.
So I think my two names here are Craig Overton and Bryden Cox, and I don't think that either of them would be in much demand, for example, in an IPL auction, and I don't think they'll be in demand even in a league like, say, PSL or something like that. That's just my view as a recruiter, and I don't understand. And I know there's maybe a different format, but what I'm trying to say is that these players don't play 50 over domestic cricket now, so they've got no choice but to go on how they're bowling in T20 cricket, right? And their numbers aren't great. It's as simple as that. Now, England also seem to have this like obsession with middle overs enforcers, but I'm not convinced that it's a plus EV strategy.
I kind of agree with this. I think if you've got Plunkett and Wood available, it makes sense to go down that route because you have a guy who can bowl, you know, unbelievably fast, and a guy who's got a lot of skill and bowls from an extremely high height. They're massive points of difference. I don't know if that works if you're going to Craig Overton at 85 miles an hour, spraying it all over the place. It's not enforcing, is it? He's not enforcing anything. What's he enforcing? It's like, he's like one of those PCSOs. He's got no power.
Don't worry, that's how I feel as an analyst.
That was sort of my observation. It was like, well, what are you here for? Would you have gone for like Jake Lintott, or, well, you said Benny Howell already as a player that?
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, is that obviously they've got some really nice options in terms of match-up spin from Mo and Livy, who are, you know, obviously in the team for their batting as well, and that's fantastic. But I also think that England should look at maybe a dual spin attack a lot more, like a dual specialist spin attack, if you like. And especially against a South African team that I don't think plays spin particularly well, this would have been a good opportunity to look at some of the other options. It was interesting because I saw that Rahan Ahmed was training with England today, and I'm thinking to myself, they could do a lot worse than actually kicking for the next game. I mean, he's an exceptional young player, really is. But yeah, just, and then the other one that I'm not. I personally don't have a problem with this at all, but a lot of people are talking about it on social media with Potts. Now, I think actually I don't mind Potts. I actually think he's pretty decent, and at least there's a body of evidence to suggest that, well, one, he's done very well in Test cricket, so he's taken to international cricket very, very well. But more importantly, there's a body of evidence in T20 cricket to say that he's a significantly above average bowler. And not just that, he also bowls at the high scoring phases, power play, and his numbers at death are very, very good as well. So I don't mind experimenting with the Potts at all. That's not an issue for me at all. But I'm not convinced at all about the merits of Overton and Class. And I'm not really convinced about the merits of Sam Curran as a frontline bowler either, or David Willey for that matter. So the current version of what I'm talking as well. So there's a lot of question marks over this England bowling attack. I don't know what you think, Jack.
No, I'd broadly agree. I think there's some kind of wasted picks, is how I'd describe them. Like, you know, if you wanted to put out the best possible England bowling lineup for a particular match, then maybe David Willey is still in that. You bearing in mind the injuries and stuff, maybe David Willey's still in there. Maybe, maybe I don't think he is, but maybe Craig Overton is. Maybe that's what they're thinking, is we want to put out the best possible bowling attack, and we think Craig Overton is in it, and we like that he can bat as well, so it extends our batting.
If you like a bowler who can bat, why don't you just pick Benny Howell and be done with
it? But this is where I'd maybe say there were sort of wasted picks, in that we kind of know that Craig Overton isn't going to be good enough to, or if you're going into a World Cup with Craig Overton as your best bowler, then or as one of your best 5 bowlers, sorry, then you're in major danger. Like you have got a really weak team. So why not have a look at some other people who might be a bit better than him, that you like, where you've got, maybe you have theories that they won't work out at an international level, but their numbers are good. So why not test it? Or maybe Rian Ahmed, maybe you look at him and you think, well, we don't really have any data, but he looks good in the nets. Maybe throw him in for a game. Like, why not have a look at some of these people and see if they can do it at a slightly higher level, instead of picking people where basically all they've managed to do is sort of prove that they can't. Now it might go wrong. Maybe Benny Howe can't do it, and he goes at 10 and over, and it's a big embarrassment for one match. It doesn't matter. Like there's no
in this match. So what difference does it make? It makes nothing.
Yeah, like there's nothing really at stake. And in the India matches as well. Like, it couldn't be clearer in some of those matches that nobody cared what the outcome of the result was going to be. It was they're just friendlies. Like, so why not see, is what I'd say. Anyway, Dan, I just want to talk really briefly about South Africa and their prospects going into a World Cup. And then we've got a bunch of questions. We'll try and wrap this up in about 20 minutes from now. South Africa look okay, I think. Mm-hmm. They've got a team that I think kind of makes sense on paper. Rabada didn't play in this match as well, so he's another good bowling option to come in. They've got spinners that are, actually pretty good. If you're looking at sort of role definition, then you've got Milan and de Kock is a good opening partnership. You've got sort of pace and stability there, or intent and stability. Van der Dussen and Markram as those middle over cruisers or facilitators are building, reasonably solid white ball careers as guys that can add runs across those middle 25 overs and set something up later on in the game. And then Miller and Klaassen a little bit later on in the order. I mean, there are question marks about David Miller until the last 6 months, maybe. But if I were taking David Miller as a number 5 or 6 to a World Cup in India, I'd be feeling pretty confident that I was going to get some decent production out of them. What do you reckon? A potential dark horse for the World Cup?
5th favourites for me.
5th favourites. So yeah, I think so. They're in the playoff shout. Who would you have above them? I mean, I'm guessing India, England,
Australia,
and Pakistan. Yeah. So they're not out of the conversation.
No, I mean, there's a few. I think this South Africa team. I mean, England didn't try and exploit this at all, and I don't know if that's because they didn't know about it or because they just didn't really care. I think they can be match-up weak, so that's that's something that I think other teams can exploit. Milan in particular has got poor numbers against left arm spin and uninspiring numbers against off spin, even though it should be his matchup. So then you're looking at, for me, like, it was a no-brainer to get Mo and Ali on very, very early against him and De Kock. De Kock's got that noted weakness against off spin as well, compared to other bowling types. I think that Van der Dussen, this format suits a lot more than T20.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think he can be guilty of taking too long to get set in T20. Whereas I think that he's almost like that cruiser that you described earlier, Jack.
Yeah.
Mark Rim, I'm starting to really rate very highly in white ball cricket after, he's really impressed me over the last year and a half. Come out of nowhere, really. And obviously Miller has reinvented himself as well. I've got doubts of a few others. Got doubts on Klassen, but then you've got someone like Tristan Stubbs who can come in if necessary and bolster that hitting down the order. I'm not at all convinced about Fekler. Is that
I think it's Peffer. Yeah, I'd agree with this. I think he's just along for the ride.
Yeah, but
they could have Dwayne Pretorius instead, couldn't they?
So, yeah, absolutely. Or Via Mulder. There's options. Maharaj, I'm not massively convinced about, but then when you think you've got Rabada to come into this team as well, a Rabada at 8 perhaps looks a bit too high, with Nokia, Ngidi, and Shamsi at 9, 10, 11. That's a long tail, but it's a pretty good bowling attack, those 4 players. So I think on their day they could beat anybody. Just still for me, slight doubt about how explosive they could be on a general basis.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, that's South Africa. Let's go on to the questions. I broke these down sort of roughly by theme. So start with England batting. Andy Ward, do England have a genuine issue with their batting at the moment, or is it just a few bad games? We've talked about this a lot, but to answer that in like a couple of words, what would you say? I would say yes, but probably have the resources to solve it in the medium to longer term.
Yeah, I agree with that. Kind of a bit of both, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about that in a moment, because there are some questions along those along those lines too. Rana says, the role of a number 7 in an ODI setup, how has it evolved over the years? I think that's a really interesting question, actually. I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that specifically.
Well, they've got to be able to hit, I think, is a primary objective as a non-negotiable, because the chances are, you were talked about those players coming in after the 40 over mark later on, and you don't need an accumulator in that role. So it's a non-negotiable that these guys can have a good boundary percentage and ideally a good 6 percentage as well. So and then ideally you're looking at someone who can contribute with the ball in a notable way, and I don't mean 3, 4, 5 overs here and there. I mean maybe 7 or 8, and if you can bowl outside the middle as well, then even better. So for me, if I'm looking at a number 7, those are the kind of things that I want. I want strong bowling output and a hitter, basically.
I think it's a really interesting role from a statistical point of view to look at as well, especially if you look at like raw numbers. I think it's the hardest, or one of the hardest roles to analyze in an ODI, because particularly on a batting side, batting average and strike rate don't tell you the whole story, because they come in such different times, depending on sort of when that 5th wicket falls. Like they could be in the 25th over and have to be like the rebuilder, Dhoni style or something like that, or they could be in the 40th over. And what you need in those situations are 2 quite different players. And because you have to bat in those 2 roles, your form or your ability in one of those roles will interfere with your overall stats versus the sort of other one. So I was talking about Mo earlier, amazing after the 40th over, like one of the best players in the world to have come in with 10 overs left. Very iffy if he comes in earlier than that, not really a rebuilder at all. Jadeja's got not exactly the similar split, but Jadeja, when he comes in pre-40th over, basically just survives. he strikes at like 65. He just holds up an end until the innings gets deep enough, or while there's a batter at the other end scoring some runs, and then tees off a bit at the death. They tend to be quite binary sort of things. And what that produces is like I think Moeen Ali's overall line, as it were, is a batting average of 25 and a strike rate of 100. And that looks a bit underwhelming. But then you look at these situational, the times he could come in, and you're like, God, it would be great if he came in after the 40th over. Like it's an interesting one to interpret. I reckon. Who's the best number 7 in the world? Would you say Jadeja still, mate? Oh,
It could be, or I mean, I don't necessarily plays in this role, but I think someone like a Hardik Pandya kind of fits that. What I was saying about earlier as well.
You'd have a pretty good batting lineup if you were sending Hardik at 7.
Yeah, you? For sure. But like a hitter who's more than a sort of 3, 4, 5 over bowler as well.
Yeah. Structure-wise, we had a couple of questions. Nelberg Cricket. How do you go about selecting ODI teams in the future with no discernible List A cricket? 4-day performances, test performances, 100 or the Blast, North East South trials, List A, Lions level games, A tours. What is it that you look at?
And that's a great question. A lot of people seem on social media to make the point on Tuesday that the demise of the 50 over competition has caused this. Well, newsflash, England didn't really pick players based on their performances in Royal London Cup when it was a first team competition. So let's not go to extremes on that one. I would lean towards T20 more. I think the skills are closer in transferability than from red ball cricket. Obviously, if a player's doing well in red ball cricket, then all the better, because it's showing, in Test cricket, I should say, it's shown that like I said a bit of the pots earlier, it's kind of shown that perhaps the upside in at a higher level. But I think ultimately you've got to look at T20 or T20 100 more than anything else. And this is why what frustrates me a little bit is that England are picking players where there's not really that evidence that from T20 that they're a markedly above average player.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think there are some bowling roles maybe where you can look at the Test cricket a little bit, like if they're a particularly good new ball bowler and you think you can get a 5 or 6 over spell out of them in an ODI, maybe that wants to be part of the factor. But they still have to bowl another 4 overs, so they need some T20 skills at some point to get those in when the ball is old. So it's not, the solution isn't to pick James Anderson. You know what I mean? It's to pick somebody who could do like maybe Potts, for example, like could open the bowling in a Test match, would probably be pretty good at it. That will transfer into opening the bowling in ODI cricket, but they also have some ability in other phases of a white ball match. Yeah. Batting, I think a lot of the roles, or you can almost entirely look at T20 cricket, with the exception of these kind of cruiser positions where you probably want to see who can do what in a longer format. Not I wouldn't say 4-day cricket, but I think that's maybe where A tours where they play 3 or 4 ODIs away in Australia over a winter or something like that. So you actually can, or could in theory do that. I mean, I do think you can guess that to some extent as well. I think you could guess, for example, that maybe a player like Zach Crawley could do that.
I've actually got really good T20 numbers as well.
Yeah. Well, you look at his T20 numbers and you look at sort of what he's able to do in Test cricket when the ball is not moving around too much, and you see that he's got a range of shots, and it's like, it's not beyond the realms of expectation that he would do okay as number 4 in ODI cricket. Like it's
I agree. Yeah.
Matt, and I think maybe the answer is, if you're going to play, is to play some of these people. England's problem over the last 7 years, and I look at this as an amazing stat. James Taylor is their 5th most played player, 3, 4, or 5 since 2015. It's Stokes, Root, Morgan, Butler, James Taylor. James Taylor's played like 10 innings in that.
England play more days of Test cricket than any other country over the last time period.
So it's
more days of international cricket, I should say.
Yeah, and so but they're not. Yeah, they just didn't rotate that middle order in ODIs at all. So just it's a transition phase.
This leads on to this, the hot topic at the moment, which is workload management and Ben Stokes retiring because he wants to play 2 formats. And there's such a divergence in skill set now from one format to the other that really this should be happening a lot more.
Yeah.
And England's top 4 of England's top 5 in this match against South Africa play Test cricket.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think we've got a question about this, and I can't remember what it is, but I'll read it out and we'll answer it sort of now. I think that more rotate. I still think that Ben Stokes is in England's best 5. Not best 5. It should be 3, 4, or 5 for England's ideal ODI team. I still think that.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to argue that. Yeah.
But surely there's a way to have that happen, but not have him play 6 ODIs against India and South Africa in the summer that literally don't matter when he's got one leg. Like surely you can have both those things.
That kind of compromise, that sensible dealing with the situation.
Yeah,
and also I find that, I mean, perhaps there's other reasons for this as well, but I think relatively speaking, compared to the average player, he's a better ODI player than he is a T20 player.
I'd agree with that by miles. I don't think that's even close. I mean, I think. I don't think he's made the decision to retire from ODI cricket because he views that as his worst format. I think he thinks it's harder work for less glory, less money. It's more boring. It's less relevant. Like it's for sure.
And that's that relevance question. I think is someone else has asked on Twitter, isn't it, or similar?
Yeah. So we'll get through. I think there's a few more, and we'll just run through them quickly. Lloyd says, "Is there an appetite to introduce the Sunday League similar to the old John Player League 40 over format in county cricket? I guess you might know more about whether people talk about this. I don't think there is. I think they could do better with the ODI with the 50 over stuff. I think they could play it in a block of 2 weeks at the end of April or something like that.
I agree with that. It should be played the first comp of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can always, if it rains, you can always cut it down and you'll still get a result. Like it's. It kicks off the season.
Placates the people who hate red ball cricket in April as well. So it's a win-win, right? I genuinely don't understand why they don't do it. It's an absolute no-brainer.
You get a look at all these skills. Like you get at least an idea of maybe Zach Crawley, can he do it? Can he bat in the middle overs? Like let's have a look. Like
you still get the 100 players playing it as well. So why on earth wouldn't you do that? It makes no sense to me. In regards to the actual question, I'm going to be honest, I haven't had a single player come up to me ever. Wish they'd bring back the old Sunday League or whatever it was, 40 over. Was it John Player Sunday League or whatever? Look, any format introduction or change of format is ultimately going to be driven by one thing. And I think we all know what that one thing is, and that's money. And look, if a 40 over format sold a ton more tickets than a 50 over format, I'm sure that they'd do it, but I don't think it does. So I don't think it'll make any difference at all.
No. Well, I think that basically is the scenario. VJ says, have England journalists, pundits, ex-players and fans finally realised how much the team is missing Morgan's genius as captain because they have been losing more than they're winning lately? Were they too quick to push Morgan out in the setup? I think the answer to both of those is no. I think people knew Morgan was a good captain, but Morgan, the batter, was so subpar in his last 18 months as an England player that it didn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think what the problem isn't so much Owen Morgan leaving. I think it's Owen Morgan leaving when the team needs some surgery in terms of transition from a few players who are perhaps coming towards the end of their peak, and that's going to require the integration of a number of new players over the short and medium term to cover that. So goes back to, I think, to what you were saying, Jack, in your Substack article about perhaps this wasn't the best time to be leading the England white ball team right now.
I think, well, yeah, I think it's tricky. Richard says, when is Butler going to stamp his authority on the team as captain? It goes back to the point about it being a tricky time to lead the team. Like, what are you supposed to do if you've got to get through 10 overs of Craig Overton against the Indian middle order, against Rishabh Pant? Like, what's the solution there? Like, it's either you're going to either feed Rishabh Pant, Craig Overton, or David Willey. It's not that one of them is going to get him out, or there's a tactical thing you can do. It's you're just in trouble. And batting wise, England, if it's not, Butler hasn't told the team to go out there and get bowled out in 4 consecutive matches. Like, he wants them to get 300 like normal. And
if he's got any sense, he's going to say, all right, okay, business as usual. He's not going to try and reinvent the wheel. He's going to say, right, we'll play the same way. Morgan's gone. Hopefully we can get a better batter in, and we play the same way. It's as simple as that. And when unless Josh Butler is the sole selector, which I hope isn't the case, then there really can't be any blame attributed to him at all, I don't think.
No, right. We've got 2 more questions from Discord, and then we will wrap up the show. VJ says, Dan, what do you think about a 40 over limited overs international instead of 50 over? Would that be a compromise between throwing out the format entirely and giving people the chance to earn more money, and I guess T20 cricket as well? Did you knock off 10 overs to make it a bit more interesting?
Well, the host venues won't like it because they'll lose food and beverage sales as well.
That's true.
And presumably it's tough. Well, I'm sure we're in what is it called, shrinkflation at the moment, whereby people are trying to
It's still £1 for a Twix, but you only get one finger.
Exactly. So maybe they will try and charge the same amount of money for a 40 over game as they will for a 50 over game. I've got another invention. Oh, well, not an invention, I suppose is the wrong way to describe it, but a plan.
Yes.
I would rather see this. I'm interested to hear views on this, actually. Would you rather see 2 T20 matches played on the same venue on the same day than one 50 over match?
It's a tricky one. I really liked the 100 when they did it, but it was like watching 2 different games. Like, it wasn't a double header of the same.
Would it be like a women's and a men's double header?
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if I'd love it if it was like, England win the first match and we're just going to get up and go again. Like,
they did that quite a lot in the second team. You see, they have a double headers.
Yeah. Do people go and watch it?
Well, it's a second team cricket, so probably not. But international cricket might be a bit different.
Yeah, I think I have a memory of going to the World Cup where Stuart Broad threw the ball into the outfield and lost that match against the Netherlands. I think I went to a doubleheader there. I think I went to see Netherlands v Pakistan, South Africa v New Zealand as a back-to-back contest. That was quite good. But again, 2 different teams.
Well, instead of 50 over match, why didn't you have England women play a match first, then England men's play a match?
That's probably. I think that's a viable idea. I don't think ODI cricket's going to go away anyway. I think what I think is going to happen, and I think it's perfectly rational, is that you'll see more domestic T20 cricket because people want to see, they want to see the best players in the world regularly play in their country and go to the stadium and watch it on TV in their time zone. Like, it makes sense that people want that. It makes sense there's a market for it, and they're good. They're good, fun tournaments to watch. So I think we'll see more of those. I think the thing will be squeezed out of ODIs and T20 cricket because
bilaterals, you mean?
Yeah, they're just irrelevant. They're boring a lot of the time.
There's no real concept. No one really cares.
So they'll disappear, but the World Cups will remain. And in the run-up to World Cups, you'll see a bit more bilateral cricket as teams try and figure out their thing. I mean, do you remember the days when it used to, like, the summer used to be like a 5-test series, a 2-test series, and then like about 7,000 ODIs to get like it would like be like there'd be like a series between England and South Africa. It'd be like 7 ODIs. It'd be like
I
what?
think I'm in a best of 9 somewhere at some
Yeah,
point.
it's just like, what is the point of all of these matches? And it's shrunk since then. It's shrunk since the last World Cup cycle. I don't know. I mean, like if you've got T20 cricket as well, and we all agree that there are some skills shared there. So like what a large number of people in your team are going to do. You might want to refine some bowling roles, refine your middle over cruisers a little bit. But do you need 15 ODIs a year to do that? I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure that there's a decent correlation between a batter's balls per dismissal in T20 cricket and their
I would imagine you'd be in the ballpark. Yeah.
I don't think we find that an anchor in ODI cricket suddenly becomes like.
Well, yeah. The only thing is that like I don't know who pick a player. I don't know, Manish Pandey, for example, pretty poor T20 player, but I reckon he could hold his own in an ODI team in a particular role. I think he'd be.
Yeah, but then that's because he plays that.
Yeah. But like, I think his days might be numbered to some extent in T20. In fact, in the IPL this year, he barely played. But I still don't think that necessarily means he hasn't got a skill that would be useful in a.
Yeah, but that's because presumably his team wanted a more attacking player.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, but that's. I think
balls per dismissal's bad. It's that his boundary percentage isn't great.
Well, I think what I'm driving at is that there are different factors behind selection for some roles in T20 cricket and ODIs. Yeah, so like, but do you need? I mean, again, do you need to pay 20 ODIs a year to figure that out?
No,
Not really.
Nonsense.
No. And 2 more questions. We've done like an hour now. Both from Lan. What's more important when recruiting a bowler? Their strike rate or their economy rate? I think this is in T20 cricket related to that Himanish Ganju article that was out yesterday, which showed the value of taking wickets at different phases in the game. What do you look at?
Yeah, I don't think it's as easy to answer that as a general question, because I think different things matter for the type of bowler that you are and the phase that you bowl in. I think that sometimes, I mean, generally speaking, I think most people who have ever read any of my work or listened to me on here or other pods will know that I value winning the boundary percentage in a match. And that's a two-way street. It doesn't just revolve around boundary hitting, but it also works on boundary prevention. Now, I think you can indulge a bowler bowling, so 2 in the power play, and maybe leaking a slightly above average boundary percentage if their strike rate is really strong, because by their wicket taking abilities are then hopefully causing a downturn in the opposition's boundary scoring for one of your other bowlers. So it has a positive knock-on effect to the rest of the team, because obviously they're taking wickets up top, which generally means that a team will slow down. So you can indulge that. But generally speaking, you don't really want bowlers who leak runs in the middle overs or at death. And strike rate is a little bit overvalued at the death, but it still has its purpose. But you wouldn't pick a guy who, for example, who has a strike rate of, say, 8 at the death, but has an economy rate of 11. I mean, that's just pointless.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. The second question sort of follows on from this is, do you take into account who players have played their cricket with as a factor when selecting or recruiting? And I think with a view here that if they're playing with a bowler who takes loads of wickets at the other end, they're going to look good by extension, although they maybe didn't do the hard work.
So it's a good question, actually. I don't really want to go into it too much. But the brief answer is, I don't think many people do, but I do.
Okay, well, there you go. Dan, we're going to wrap up the show there. Thanks very much for coming on. Great to catch up with you. Great. And hopefully have you on again at some point in the near future. You're doing the 100 this year with the Phoenix?
Yeah, can't wait. 2 weeks time, or well, it's less than 2 weeks time.
It is, yeah. Best of luck with that. I will try and catch you before then, but then you'll be on the road, I presume.
Make sure you try and come to a game or something as well.
Yeah, we're actually talking with some people about that, so we'll
Live show from Edgbaston.
Well, let's see. A reminder that we are on Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod. And as I said right at the top of the show, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod is the best way to support us directly. That's all in the show notes. We will catch you again soon. Goodbye, everyone.